Let's jump right into it. Number 7. Ancient Greek warriors believed they could absorb the strength and courage of lions by drinking their blood before battle. This wasn't just some random superstition either. We're talking about highly disciplined Spartan soldiers who built their entire military strategy around calculated psychological warfare. They'd capture lions, drain their blood into ceremonial cups, and gulp it down while staring their enemies in the eye. The theory was simple. If lions were the apex predators of the land, then consuming their essence would transfer that predatory dominance to human warriors. What makes this even more fascinating is that these same warriors who conquered most of the known world genuinely believed this gave them superhuman reflexes and fearlessness. Modern science tells us they were basically just getting a massive placebo effect boost. But imagine facing an army of soldiers who were absolutely convinced they had lion powers coursing through their veins. That's psychological warfare on a whole different level. Number 6. Medieval alchemists spent centuries trying to create a substance called the Philosopher's Stone, but here's what most people don't know: they weren't just trying to turn lead into gold. The real prize was something called the Elixir of Life, which was supposed to grant immortality and superhuman regeneration abilities. These weren't random dudes mixing chemicals in their basements either. We're talking about some of the smartest people of their time, including Roger Bacon and Albertus Magnus, who dedicated their entire lives to this pursuit. They believed that by purifying and combining specific metals and minerals in exact proportions, they could create a substance that would stop aging and heal any wound instantly. The process involved heating mercury, sulfur, and lead in special furnaces for months at a time, while reciting incantations and performing complex mathematical calculations. Some alchemists claim they'd actually succeeded. Nicholas Flamel supposedly lived for over 600 years after discovering the formula. Of course, what they were really doing was accidentally inventing early chemistry and discovering things like phosphorus and various acids. But imagine the dedication it took to spend decades of your life believing you were just one formula away from becoming immortal. Number 5. In ancient China, Taoist monks developed a practice called breath retention, where they would literally try to stop breathing for hours at a time to achieve superhuman consciousness. This wasn't meditation as we know it today. This was extreme biological manipulation. The monks believed that by controlling their breath to the point of near death, they could separate their consciousness from their physical body and gain supernatural abilities like telepathy and precognition. The training process was absolutely brutal. Monks would start by holding their breath for a few minutes, then gradually work up to 30 minutes, then hours. Some claimed they could enter a state where their heart rate dropped to nearly zero and their body temperature plummeted, essentially putting themselves into a hibernation-like trance. The most advanced practitioners allegedly could stay in this state for days, during which time they claimed to travel to other dimensions and communicate with spirits. What's really wild is that modern research on extreme breath holding has shown that humans can actually achieve some pretty incredible physiological changes. Free divers can slow their heart rate to 14 beats per minute and redirect blood flow to essential organs. So while the monks probably weren't gaining psychic powers, they were definitely pushing human biology to its absolute limits. Number 4. Victorian-era scientists became obsessed with using electricity to enhance human capabilities after Luigi Galvani discovered that electrical currents could make dead frog legs twitch. This led to some absolutely insane experiments, where people would literally electrocute themselves trying to gain superhuman strength and intelligence. The most famous practitioner was Giovanni Aldini, who would tour Europe giving public demonstrations where he'd hook electrical devices up to human corpses and make them move like they were alive again. But the really crazy part is that living people started volunteering for these experiments. Wealthy Victorian gentlemen would pay to have electrical currents run through their bodies, believing it would enhance their mental faculties and physical prowess. They'd sit in chairs with metal plates attached to their heads and limbs, while operators cranked hand-powered electrical generators. The patients would convulse violently as electricity coursed through their nervous systems, and many reported feeling superhuman strength and clarity afterward. Some doctors claimed electricity could cure everything from depression to paralysis to stupidity. One physician named James Graham built an entire medical practice around celestial beds that would deliver electrical shocks to couples, supposedly enhancing their fertility and sexual performance. The scary thing is that some of these treatments actually worked, probably because they were accidentally stimulating nerve pathways and triggering endorphin releases. But people were literally risking electrocution because they believed electricity was the key to human enhancement. Number 3, Roman gladiators had a practice that sounds like something out of a horror movie. They would consume the blood and organs of defeated opponents to absorb their fighting abilities. This wasn't just symbolic cannibalism either. There were specific rituals where victorious gladiators would immediately cut open their fallen enemies and consume their heart, liver, and blood while it was still warm. The Romans believed that a warrior's courage and skill were stored in these organs, and by eating them immediately after combat, they could permanently add those abilities to their own fighting repertoire. Gladiator schools actually had official protocols for this practice. After a fight, attendants would quickly preserve the choice organs of defeated gladiators and prepare them for consumption by the victor. The most prized parts came from gladiators who had never been defeated, because their organs supposedly contained pure, concentrated fighting essence. Some gladiators became legendary not just for their combat skills, but for how many opponents they had literally consumed. Marcus Attilius supposedly ate parts of over 20 defeated enemies during his career. The practice was so common that Roman physicians started studying whether it actually worked, and some claimed they could measure increased strength and reflexes in gladiators who regularly consumed human organs. Modern anthropologists think this practice actually might have had some psychological benefits. The ritual of consuming your enemy probably boosted confidence and created a powerful mental association between victory and physical empowerment. Number 2, during the Renaissance, wealthy Europeans became convinced that consuming ground-up mummies would grant them supernatural longevity and healing powers. This wasn't just eating random dead bodies. There was an entire international trade network dedicated to importing authentic Egyptian mummies and processing them into medicinal powder. Apothecaries across Europe would advertise mumia vera, true mummy powder, as the ultimate life extension supplement. The process was incredibly elaborate. Merchants would travel to Egypt, bribe tomb raiders to steal recently discovered mummies, then carefully grind up the preserved flesh and organs into a fine powder. The most expensive varieties came from mummies that were still wrapped in their original bandages and showed no signs of decay. European nobles would pay astronomical sums for just a few ounces of this powder, which they'd mix into wine or honey and consume regularly. King Charles II of England supposedly mummy powder every morning for over 20 years. The belief was that since Egyptian mummification had preserved these bodies for thousands of years, consuming them would transfer that preservation power to living people. Some physicians claimed mummy powder could heal wounds instantly, prevent aging, and even bring people back from the brink of death. The demand became so intense that Egyptian tomb robbers started mummifying recently dead criminals and selling them as ancient mummies to meet European demand. Eventually, the practice died out when people realized they were basically just eating ancient corpses for no reason. But for over 200 years, consuming human remains was considered the height of medical sophistication among European elites. Number 1, in 16th century Europe, there was a widespread belief that bathing in virgin blood would restore youth and grant supernatural beauty and longevity. This practice reached its horrifying peak with Elizabeth Bathory, but she wasn't the only one. This was actually a common practice among wealthy nobles who believed human blood contained the essence of life itself. The theory was that young, pure blood contained concentrated life force that could reverse aging and grant extended lifespan when absorbed through the skin. Noble families would literally kidnap young women, drain their blood into special bathing tubs, and soak in it for hours while performing elaborate rituals. Some practitioners claimed that bathing in virgin blood once per month could extend human lifespan indefinitely. The blood had to be fresh, preferably drained from a living person just minutes before the bath. Wealthy patrons would pay enormous sums to procure the highest quality blood from young, healthy women. Some nobles built entire rooms in their castles dedicated to this practice, complete with drainage systems and holding cells for victims. The most dedicated practitioners would consume the blood both internally and externally, believing this would maximize the life-extending effects. What makes this even more disturbing is that many of these people genuinely believed it was working. They point to their continued health and youthful appearance as proof that the practice was effective, not realizing they were probably just benefiting from their wealthy lifestyle and good nutrition. The practice finally ended when authorities started prosecuting it as murder, but for over a century, bathing in human blood was considered a legitimate medical treatment among European aristocracy. I'll make similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.